Hello, cooking enthusiasts. This week's video is going to be another marshmallow recipe. If you've followed me for a little while, you'll know that not that long ago I made some banana marshmallows. And in general, this is a real go-to recipe when it comes to any kind of confection work that I do. Now, the reason I like making marshmallows so much is that, one, I think homemade marshmallows are much more delicious than store-bought. I also think marshmallows are relatively easy in terms of candy making. People often seem impressed slash intimidated when I talk about making my own marshmallows, but it's really what I would consider a beginner's confection. So I set out to develop this recipe that would let me use up excess vinegar or kombucha. You could also apply this to pretty much any sort of fermented beverage like ginger beer, or even if you have a little extra wine or mead or cider lying around. Now, this footage is from my first attempt at making these marshmallows, and this utilized a really nice apple vinegar I had lying around. Unfortunately, this first attempt didn't actually work, but the footage is essentially still useful. I will just be giving you some slightly different measurements for the actual recipe. The written recipe calls for a wide range of liquid as your starting flavor. If you are using actual vinegar or a very strong kombucha, maybe use lower amounts than you would for a more sweet kombucha. Another important difference between my first and second attempt is that in my second attempt, I really let my fermented liquid simmer more slowly before adding the other types of sugar. Acetic acid and any traces of alcohol are volatile, so you want to boil off most of those before you really get into making your candy syrup. Although make sure your kitchen is well ventilated because it does smell. Another thing I forgot to mention is that before you get into seriously boiling your candy syrup, you already want some sort of prepared dish with parchment paper and your marshmallow powder. Your marshmallow powder could be as simple as straight icing sugar. I augmented mine with a little bit of citric and malic acid for sourness. If you are going for a vinegar and kombucha vibe, you can also incorporate some powdered acetic acid if you want. The other thing that needs to be done before seriously boiling your syrup is that your powdered gelatin should already be in your stand mixer bowl with some liquid to bloom. My first attempt involved 2 packages of standard powdered gelatin bloomed directly in my vinegar, and I think both of those factors really failed me. So for the actual recipe, I recommend blooming in 90 to 100 mils of just water or a very mellow fermented liquid. And for a recipe of this size, I recommend using 3 standard packages of gelatin, which is 21 grams. Maybe slightly less, but I will get back to that. As you are preparing those other things, your fermented liquid of choice can be slowly simmering on low, but once it's almost entirely reduced, it's time to get into serious candy mode. You are going to add your sugars to form the candy syrup, 150 grams of corn syrup, 200 grams of regular or lightly toasted sugar, and then I do recommend adding some sort of accent sugar. With the apple vinegar, it was maple syrup. With the kombucha in the second attempt, it was honey. You just want to make sure you are adding roughly the equivalent of 100 grams of sugar. And if you don't want to use any sort of accent sugar, you would just use 300 total of your regular sugar. You can stir all of those in to your reduced liquid until it dissolves, and then of course you want to stop stirring it and turn up the heat. Similar to the banana marshmallows, this liquid is a natural product, so it can foam up when boiling. You want to make sure you are using a relatively large cooking vessel. Let the mixture boil as hard as you can without boiling over until it reaches 110 Celsius. Then you want to quickly and carefully go turn your stand mixer onto the lowest speed. Once the stand mixer is running, return back to your syrup and keep boiling until it hits the target temperature of 116 to 118 Celsius. You then turn the stove off. Quickly and carefully pour your hot syrup into the running stand mixer, which again already contains the bloomed gelatin. Once your syrup is in, slowly increase the speed of your stand mixer every minute or so until you reach a medium-high speed. Once there, you'll need to give it a good 10 to 12 minutes of whipping on relatively high speed. And then you can transfer it into your prepared dish. You want to work relatively quickly with a non-stick sprayed spatula to get it into your prepared dish, and then sprinkle extra marshmallow powder on top. From there, it needs to set overnight, before being chopped into squares and coated in extra powder. Overall, the second attempt was totally successful. It was sweet, but not overly so, with a really pleasant, slightly tangy aftertaste. The texture was a little firmer than I usually enjoy, so you could probably get away with using 2.5 packages of gelatin. But I think this is a good use for some extra fermented liquids that you might have. If you have any other questions, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching.